I'm Lara Kochersan and this is Newsfeed, your dose of what people are talking about online. Since October 7th, social media has become a battleground for narratives surrounding the war on Gaza, offering a crucial platform for Palestinians and their supporters to share unfiltered views and experiences. Graphic posts showing the realities of the war, bombings, casualties, and destruction have provided a raw and powerful counterpoint to mainstream media coverage. These vivid portrayals have exposed the world to the brutal impact of Israeli military actions and rallied international support for Palestinians.
Israel's war on Gaza has been called the world's first live-streamed genocide. That phrase is meant to imply that using their mobile phones, Palestinians have been able to record images of the kind of suffering that they've been enduring in order to show the world. So there have been thousands of videos taken by Palestinians of things like the impacts of Israeli bombardment, children being killed, unarmed civilians being shot in the street, the devastation and destruction of civilian infrastructure in Gaza by the Israeli army. And of course, all of that footage and all of those images have helped to bolster support for the pro-Palestinian cause. However, there are some people who haven't been moved by those images to show sympathy with the Palestinians. So particularly in Israel, the figures show that an overwhelming majority of the population actually support what the Israeli army is doing in Gaza. And those images haven't shifted their opinion. Many prominent Israeli politicians and journalists and Israeli soldiers have been sharing images that other people might describe as war crimes in order to show that Israel is winning, is beating, is punishing its opponents. They've been used to try and project an image of victory.
That's why many Israelis favor censorship on social media, believing that certain content related to the war should be restricted. That's according to a recent Pew Research Center survey conducted between March and April. Sarah has more.
About 3/4 of Israelis use social media. Despite high social media usage, most do not post or share about political or social issues online. Fewer than 1/4 say they engage in these discussions, often or sometimes. When it comes to Israel's war on Gaza, sentiment for censorship is strong. Over half of Israeli adults believe that posts containing graphic content, those inciting violence or showing support for Hamas, should not be allowed. Even posts showing sympathy for Gazan civilians face scrutiny, with 59% of Israelis believing such content should be kept off social media. Furthermore, there is a split over posts criticizing the Israeli government's handling of the war. Half of Israelis support censorship of these posts.
There have also been reports of Israeli authorities detaining Palestinians and imposing workplace and educational disciplinary measures for their social media activity related to the conflict. This trend highlights the broader issue of censorship and suppression of Palestinian voices, with allegations that major social media platforms have been complicit in restricting content that supports Palestine or exposes Israeli actions. Over the past 10 months, activists have employed creative strategies to circumvent these restrictions. Techniques like algo-speak and campaigns such as All Eyes on Rafah have been used to evade censorship algorithms and draw attention to critical issues, despite efforts to stifle these voices. Malaysia now requires social media platforms with over 8 million users in the country to apply for a license to operate. And from next year, any platform without a license will face legal action. The government's goal is to tackle rising cybercrime like online fraud, gambling, cyberbullying, and sexual crimes against children. Malaysia is also looking at ways to better protect user data, improve content moderation, and restrict access for kids under 13. Earlier this year, the government reported a rise in harmful content on social media and called on companies like Meta and TikTok to step up their monitoring. However, major tech companies including Meta, Amazon, Google, and X are pushing back against Malaysia's regulatory plan, arguing it lacks transparency and consultation. In an open letter to Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, the Asia Internet Coalition AIC asked for a discussion with the government to address their concerns. The AIC warns that the proposed rules could hurt innovation, stop ongoing investments, and scare off future ones because of their complexity and high compliance costs.
Economist Jeffrey Williams said the regulations are likely to create obstacles for businesses entering the market and restrict the ability to operate freely. This, he said, will eventually affect revenue and prompt service providers to relocate to regions with fewer restrictions. Centre for Market Education CEO Camilo Felito agreed, saying the regulations will deter investors and make Malaysia less competitive than neighbouring countries. Meanwhile, Bank Muamalat Malaysia Berhad Chief Economist Afzal Nizam Abdul Rashid said steps must be taken to ensure that online businesses thrive in spite of such regulations. He pointed out that social media has been an effective business tool for micro, small and medium enterprises, and that the government must ensure that these firms continue to thrive.
Uber has been slapped with a hefty fine of $324 million by the EU for improperly transferring driver data to the US. This ranks amongst the largest penalties under Europe's General Data Protection Regulation. The Dutch Data Protection Authority imposed the fine, accusing Uber of failing to protect European drivers' personal data during transfers to its US headquarters. The investigation began after complaints from 170 French Uber drivers were brought to the French human rights group, alerting France's data protection watchdog. Uber was found to have retained sensitive driver data on US-based servers, violating the GDPR. The data includes taxi licenses, location information, photos, payment details, identity documents, and even criminal and medical records. Uber has announced plans to appeal the fine, calling it unjustified.
However, the biggest fine that's ever been levied for this reason. The biggest fine was laid against Meta, who did a similar data transfer from European to US servers and got fined $1.3 billion for it. Other companies could also be facing large fines, including TikTok, WhatsApp, which of course is also owned by Meta, and Clearview AI.
More controversy for Meta as its boss, Mark Zuckerberg, drops a massive bombshell about government censorship of social media platforms. He is alleging that the Biden-Harris administration pressured Meta to censor COVID-19 related posts.
Mark Zuckerberg just dropped this, and this is going to shake things up. He admitted that in 2021, the Biden-Harris administration and the White House pressured him for months to monitor and censor COVID-related content, even humor and satire. He said that the government's pressure was wrong. He regrets that he was not outspoken about it, and he continued to say that he will push back if something like this happens again. He also noted and talked about the contributions he made in the last election, and he said he will not be playing a role in that again.
The letter was sent to the Judiciary Committee of the US House of Representatives, with Zuckerberg expressing regret for not speaking out earlier. The White House declined to comment on the censorship claims. It's unclear what exactly triggered the letter. With elections set for November, Zuckerberg emphasized his desire to stay neutral in politics, stating he won't contribute to election infrastructure this time. The race featuring Democrat Kamala Harris and Republican Donald Trump is highly competitive. Previously, Zuckerberg contributed a substantial $400 million to Democratic efforts, and his failure to contribute this time around is bound to hurt. This week, everyone's talking about the arrest of Telegram's Pavel Durov, who was taken into custody in Paris over the weekend as he stepped off of his private jet. French authorities say the arrest is related to illicit transactions, illegal and explicit content, and fraud on his messaging app. Telegram hit back, saying it's unfair to hold the company or its owner responsible for abuse on the platform. The arrests have tongues wagging about whether other messaging platform providers could face a similar fate. But Telegram operates differently from its competitors. WhatsApp, Signal, and the iMessage services are designed to prevent anyone other than a recipient from reading messages shared on its platforms. But things are different for Telegram's 950 million users, where only secret chats are safe, and every group chat or comment on a channel can be available for all to see.
Most things that happen on Telegram are not encrypted. Well, encrypted, just not end-to-end encrypted. The most secure way to pass messages privately is to use end-to-end encryption, where the encryption and decryption happens on the user's device, as opposed to a centralized server not owned by the user. Even if the messages are stored in a centralized database, only the person with the key can read those messages, not the company hosting the database and not the authorities. The only way to read someone's messages is to physically hold them at gunpoint and make them open up their phone. This is how apps like Signal work, which has its own open source protocol and itself was recently banned in Russia. Now, Telegram does do end-to-end encryption for private chats, but everything else is public and encrypted on the server. And Telegram's protocol has received a fair amount of criticism from security researchers in the past. Things like hate speech have already been criminalized in many parts of Europe and the UK, but if a big platform like Telegram doesn't cooperate, it becomes nearly impossible to enforce those laws. Well, one idea is to cut the head off the snake by arresting the CEO when he lands in his private jet and make him an offer he can't refuse. Either spend the next 20 years locked in a cage, or let us in the back door, then get back on your private jet and continue living your life as a prolific sperm donator.
If you're an international student looking to study in Australia, this one is for you. The Australian government has implemented stricter rules on student visas. These changes might boost your chances of getting in or, unfortunately, rule you out. The decision is part of a plan to reduce overall migration to pre-pandemic levels when strict border controls kept overseas workers out. Going forward, there will be higher financial requirements and stricter English language proficiency standards for international students. Additionally, new enrollments will be capped at 270,000 for the year 2025. International education is one of Australia's largest sectors, valued at over $24 billion in the 2022-2023 financial year. Canberra argues that record migration, mainly from students in India, China, and the Philippines, has expanded the labor market but also led to housing shortages.
We've already seen visa rejection rates for certain countries increase by 3 times. So certain countries that were having a 75% visa approval rate are now down to 25%. So only 1 in 4 applicants from those countries is getting approved a visa. And then number 3, if you remember, the Australian government was going to classify certain universities in level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 being like it's a good university, they had no issues with international students. Level 3 where these are like the dodgy universities or colleges, and this is where international students use this to enter the country. Now, we are seeing that certain universities have already started rescinding offers of people that have been admitted, paid a deposit, and have submitted a visa application.
Boston catcher Danny Jansen has made Major League Baseball history as he became the first player to play for both teams in the same game. Confused, right? So this is how it happened. Jansen was batting for the Toronto Blue Jays against the Boston Red Sox back in June. The game was suspended due to heavy rain with 1 out in the top of the second inning. When the game resumed 2 months later, Jansen had already been traded to the Red Sox for 3 minor league players. During that game, the Blue Jays pinch hit for Jansen, who was now catching for the Red Sox, meaning he technically faced his own at-bat. Here's what else happened during the unusual game.
I've never seen something quite like this, so they're obviously going to have to pinch hit for him, but he is going to catch the at-bat where he was in an 0-1 count in. Ridiculous. And the guy that's going to end up pinch hitting for him is Dalton Varsho. And if you don't believe that's him behind that mask, you can see Danny Jansen defensive changes for this game right here for the Boston Red Sox. And here you go, the game is finally resuming. This is Danny Jansen's at-bat, but he's behind the plate. He's got to be the first player to ever bat and play catcher in the same at-bat. I mean, you can see, second inning, 0-1 count. Now it's an 0-2 count. He fouled it back.
Remember the saying, patience pays off? Well, that's exactly how fans of the British rock band Oasis are feeling right now. I need to be myself. That's right, Noel and Liam Gallagher are officially reuniting for an Oasis World Tour in 2025, ending a 15-year break. They both hinted at the reunion with social media posts featuring the date August 27, 2024, styled like the band's iconic logo. While ticket prices are still under wraps, fans are anxious about rumors they might exceed those of Taylor Swift's Eras tour. There's also been mixed feedback about the tour being limited to the UK. And that's our show. Find our latest stuff on YouTube and do subscribe to our channel. See you soon.